1. All right. That was a great panel, wasn't that, guys? Oh, wait. No, I'm sorry. That wasn't a panel. That was a special presentation by the Saber Guild. And
more than just the Saber Guild. There's everybody who's in that one.
Yeah. Of course, we had to do a holiday special. And I got to say, as far as in terms of holiday specials, got to say, pretty enjoyable. But enough of that. Welcome to the Capital Ships panel, where we're going to be talking everything big, giant, metal, traveling through space, through light speed, the whole 9 yards. But before we do that, I just want to remind everybody watching that we are still raising funds for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So if you see that QR code, go ahead and give that a scan and you'll be able to donate, or head to the InfernoCon website and they'll be able to help you with instructions there. Which, oh, by the way, I should say, if you donate at least $20, you get to see a little baby Yoda in festive wear. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that is something that you got to see at least once. So what are you guys waiting for? Baby Yoda wants to say hi. And plus I got a text from my dad saying, like, try to get those donations up, which you heard my old man, make it so. All right. So first of all, Randy, you look like you had a look about yourself.
You cross franchises here. Are we talking about Federation capital ships or Imperial capital ships?
We are talking not just Imperial ships, but we're talking all manner of Star Wars capital ships in the Star Wars universe. So with that being said, last year, for those who may or may not remember, we did a special sort of slide presentation. So this was our seminar course on Star Wars ships. Whereas last year we did the more smaller ships like your fighters and your transport ships. We're taking a look now at the more big guns. So with that said, let me go ahead. Oh, so it looks like I've been disabled with screen sharing. Well, whomever is in, let me see if I can, let's try right-clicking.
Whoever's the host needs to give you the control.
Yeah, that's true. So whoever is the host of the Zoom room, may I please have permissions to do screen sharing, please? Thank you. So while we're waiting on that, how have you guys been doing this fine Saturday?
Doing good.
Excellent. Jared, things still going pretty good?
Yep, things are still going pretty well.
Excellent. So good news for this panel. I'm not going to be quizzing you as to what the ships are like we did with the gaming panel.
Oh, I'm glad we brought this back because this was one of the most fun panels to put on last year. We had, I don't know if you used the same slide deck, but we had probably a good 3 hours of content we could have gone over. And it's like, you have a 50-minute panel. Yeah, we're not going to finish that.
Yeah, I took a look at the slides earlier, like a couple of days ago. I was looking through them. I was like, it looked really good. I'm excited to talk about some of the various ships that are on there.
Very nice. Well, you know what? I have an idea. I will post in the chat to everyone. From my computer desktop. The OneDrive. Sounds like I got the message. And survey says, oh my goodness, yes. All right.
There we go.
Getting everybody to see. Yay, we got it. All right. So let me go ahead and get this slideshow going. All right, class. So as I said before, we are looking at the capital ships of the Star Wars universe in large. So the ships I've got include prequel trilogy, original, sequel trilogy. So we've got a lot of ships to go through, so let's get started. I want to start with the prequel trilogy, and I want to start with the first big capital ship that I remember seeing in movie theaters, the Trade Federation Lucrative Battleship. So this is affiliated with the Trade Federation, and as you can see, this is a big boy right here, around 10,400 feet in diameter, made by the Hirsch-Kessel Drive Incorporated company. Now, anyone who has seen this ship knows that this is a pretty powerful ship if you need something to do a blockade of a planet, for example. So not only is it a formidable, warship, it's also a control ship for a lot of battle droids coming up. So any battle droids, that they need to send on the ground, they're responsible for making sure that they're operational. And so if we look at this cross section here, you'll be able to see a lot more as to what goes inside warships such as this. So right here we could see storage for battle droid invasion army ships. Obviously we could see core reactors, etc. But Jared and Randy, what else can you tell me about this ship?
I can.
Go ahead,
Want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Jared, go ahead.
Okay. So I actually do have a little bit of an interesting fact on about the Lucre Hulk, is that originally it was actually not a ship designed for war, and that it was originally just a gigantic freighter by the Trade Federation out in deep space and whatnot, that they used it to police, collect on taxes, and control their trade and shipping, manufacturing, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, which that kind of jumps into a lot of the ships we'll talk about later, where the rebel ships, resistance ships, they were not battleships built. The Imperial and First Order obviously built as battle cruisers, battleships. Rebel ships, in this case, Trade Federation, they were something else converted into a battle cruiser. What this ship gave, this is not a full battleship, although it is a formidable battleship. This, with its cargo capacity, this is a invasion. Communications disruption always means invasion. This is basically a cargo hauler to handle a embargo, handle a blockade, and to put a massive amount of troops, hardware, tech, armor onto a planet surface. That was the main purpose of this ship.
Right. So when you looked at the Battle of Naboo in episode 1, this ship was primarily responsible for all the droids operating on the ground. And once Anakin Skywalker, shot his rounds, inside the ship and blew it to pieces, that shut down everything. But since then, a lot of these have been used during the Clone Wars, doing the same sort of deal. It acts as a battleship, it acts as droid control, acts as transport, etc. All right. So now let's move on to the next ship that we have here. This is the Trade Federation core ship, also made by Hirsch-Kessel Drive Incorporated. What can you guys tell me about this ship? We first saw these on Geonosis, and you may think that, oh, aren't those Death Stars? No, they're not exactly.
Now, this is essentially putting command and control of the droid army from orbit to planet. Notice the big landing gear on it. And during Geonosis, we actually saw them launching. They've been taken down by the Republic Army and the Clone Army. But they are to put that command and control ability from orbit onto the ground. That's what they're built for. You can see it's a core ship. Very similar to the Imperial ship that landed on Lothal. Mm-hmm. We've seen in Rebels. Very similar concept.
If I'm not mistaken, isn't this also the center part of the Lucre Hulks? It actually can detach and land down onto the planet if it needs to.
Yep. And there are a few cutscenes in the movies. You can see them docking.
Yep. Yep. And these sorts of ships, you need a lot of firepower to take them down. Or for any of those familiar with Republic Commando, you just need a small strike team to get inside, download the launch codes, and that'll prevent the ships from launching. And so if we go into the next slide, we can sort of see, I know the image is a little bit blurry, but we can see how the ship operates. So we've got the core going on in here, and then also the other levels that we have for this core ship. But yes, was there anything else that we were missing regarding the Trade Federation core ship before we move on?
Oh, main purpose is droid control.
Yep, exactly. All right. So now with the advent of the Clone Wars, obviously we're going to get more enemy ships from the Separatists. This here we have is a Commerce Guild support destroyer. Obviously, it's affiliated with the Commerce Guild. This was a joint venture creation by the Hirsch Kessel Drive Incorporated and the Free DAC Volunteers Engineering Corps. So these acted more, as your support destroyers for the larger like banking clan ships and other Trade Federation ships as well. And so we're able to, so if you look right here, you're able to see more what this ship consists of. So what we can see here, this is real, unlike the Trade Federation ship, this one really seems to be more designed for warfare. So you're able to see all the guns that's available, what it's effective against, etc.
But if you go into basic naval class, a destroyer is still an escort ship. So that's why this is classified as a light destroyer. So It's nimble for a capital ship. It's nimble and it has relatively great firepower. So this main purpose is to escort a larger ship, such as, the Trade Federation landing craft.
Yeah, I was about to say, but it already got kind of answered on this next slide, but the actual name of the ship is the Recussant class. And one of the interesting facts about it is you kind of said in factory things, the Free DAC Volunteers Engineering Corps are actually the Corrin that were on that shared the planet with the Mon Cala. And that's what they called the planet DAC instead of Mon Cala. And they actually helped because since Mon Cala was split between the Mon Calamari and the Corrin and their faction war, they actually helped build those style of ships. And the ships originally were actually controlled by a droid. They had their own, kind of like not really like a mech, but it had its own brain that would control itself if any of its driving crew, organics or whatnot, weren't actually controlling it. It would control itself. It had its own AI, basically. That's what I was thinking of.
Yep, no, exactly. Well, if there isn't anything else regarding this ship, let's move on to the next one. Here we go. The Banking Clan Frigate. This one, again, made by the Hirsch Kessel Drive Incorporated. This one is slightly larger than our previous ship, but this ship sort of has the same sort of function. It can act as escort. It's also a battleship in its own right to fight against Republic Star Destroyers.
And moving up in size, you move up from a destroyer to a frigate, similar to guided missile cruisers on Terran militaries. Again, it's still an escort, but it's big enough it could survive on its own in a fight, and that's its main purpose. And you notice the relatively large armament on it.
Yes.
One of my favorite things about it is its big main cannon that it has in the middle of it. That is a pretty powerful cannon. But one of the things I always found funny, though, is that if you actually watch the Clone Wars TV show, they typically tend to have three of these standing up against three Venators and having it being like an equal match, whereas with a lot of the specs and whatnot, a Venator is in single Venators an equal match to three of these starships. Yeah. Three of these. Always
you're putting up a battleship versus a frigate.
Yeah.
I just always find it funny how they do that in certain shows and whatnot.
Yeah. I remember, playing the original Battlefront 2. I always liked the missions when you had to, when you're in the space battles, these were always the ships that you could destroy, for bonus objectives.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's take a look at what we have next. The Invisible Hand. This is Grievous's ship. And
Grievous's flagship.
Yep, this is indeed the flagship. And we're able to see, what exactly. So you look at this cross section, and obviously we saw a whole lot of this ship in episode 3. Like, we know what's inside it. We know what goes on in there. And a bonus for this ship is that even if you only have half of it, you can still fly it.
Yep, and it's very capable of happy landings.
Exactly. And so if you look at the background, you can see you can see like the Banking Clan frigate and a Commerce Guild destroyers. You can sort of see like the size and whatnot. But yeah, no, this is indeed Grievous's, flagship. Well, not his only flagship. So if you watch, Clone Wars, he obviously had more firepower, but this is what he brought for the Battle of Coruscant.
And I mean, this was featured heavily in episode 3, of course, and across the Clone Wars in multiple story arcs. Not necessarily just the Invisible Hand, but this class was there in multiple story arcs.
The name of the class of the type of ship is the Providence class.
Providence class, yep.
What it's called. And it's also one of the CIS's main carriers, as well as their fighters, because of its hangar bays, big, open, straight up through that main bulk. It can store a lot of fighters aside from the Lucrehulk.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, but it's also one of those ships where you pray the leader doesn't launch all the escape pods when he himself is escaping, because he has that power to launch all escape pods without everybody being in it.
And what you're also seeing is a progression in time. Once we got into the Clone Wars, ships started being purposely built for the Clone Wars, whether what side you were on, Republic or Federation, Trade Federation, Banking Clan, they were being purposely built for warfare. So while we saw the first ship from the Trade Federation was a converted warship, now we're getting specifically built ships.
Yep, exactly. All right. But enough about the bad guys. Let's move on to our great Galactic Republic. So what we're going to start with is the Republic Assault Ship, but made by Rathana Heavy Engineering. And we first saw these in episode 2 with the Battle of Geonosis. One of the things that struck me about the Republic Assault Ship is if you look in the cross section, it seems to be more designed for transport. So if you look real close, you can see a lot of LAAT gunships. You have some ATTEs loaded in there. So this really seemed like a ship designed mainly for transport. Obviously, it can still, carry itself out in warfare if need be. But this really seemed like we got a whole bunch of stuff we need to transport. Let's get a big ship. And if you sort of look at the ramp and the ramp sort of near the bottom, you can kind of get a better understanding of its size, because all those little white dots, those are clones.
Yeah, let's remember that this is an assault ship, also known as a troop ship. It is capable of landing versus the Venator, which really isn't capable of landing. The Acclimator class is what this is officially called. It is a landing ship, which hits on everything you just said. That look on the inside, it's designed for carrying stuff, landing. It's a formidable, ship-to-ship fighter, but its main purpose is landing armies on surfaces.
Yep.
During the first, I think about the first year of the Clone Wars, this was the workhorse of the Republic. It was their only ship, because with the clone army being developed in secret, they didn't make any, they weren't making any of the Venators or whatnot at that point. They just made a bunch of these discreetly that they sent out. And this was their first real ship of the Republic that they used until we later got the Venators.
And let us remember that first time we saw this ship was the first time we heard the Imperial March played. When these were taken off, was the first time you heard that piece of music.
Yep, indeed. But moving on from the Acclimator class troop ship.
There we go. There's
the good old Venator class Star Destroyer. This is a classic for the Clone Wars, made by Quat Drive Yards, and just look at that design. That is what you call, you know, a classic design. Obviously, looking at this image, you can tell that these are after the Clone Wars because they don't have the Galactic Republic war paint. They don't have the red stripes. It's pretty much all gray.
This is early Imperial in this photo.
Yep, this is indeed early Imperial. But we do know that these were the workhorses for the Galactic Republic. They were warships. They carried fighters. They carried
ships. These were the battleships. This was the Republic primary battleship. If we go into the original trilogies we're going to hit on, this is the equivalent of an Imperial Star Destroyer back in the Clone Wars. This was the ship.
In some degrees, it can be argued that this was actually still superior to the Imperial Star Destroyer because of how overly designed it was, especially because it worked more as like a heavy carrier with its main turbolators on the top, but it had about 4 different hangar bays because the entire length of the ship, it's just one gigantic hangar bay that opens up from the top. It has 2 on the side and 1 on the bottom as well. So it can easily deploy multiple squadrons of fighters and bombers, boarding craft, anything, as well as easily be able to defend them while they're launching.
I'm not saying that the Imperial Star Destroyer doesn't have, and we'll probably hit on ISD here shortly, but while it does have a heavy hangar access, the Empire had to go create the Quasar Fire just to answer the heavy fighter hauler.
Yeah.
But this was built to put clones on the ground. This was built to fight Trade Federation, separatist battle cruisers. This was built for all that, and it lived into service. As we have learned watching the Bad Batch, it lived into service for the first few years of the Empire before it was eventually replaced by the Victory class or the Imperial class Star Destroyers.
Yep. No, absolutely. So I think it's easy to call these ships, you know, all reliable, you know, given its long service history.
But look at the design.
Yeah.
Look at the design. Look where the bridge is. Look at the shape. Look at where everything is. And you can see that the Empire had in mind when they designed it, Chewie. They kind of took that into account when they designed the Victory class and the Imperial class Star Destroyers. Yep. Or the Interdictor class. They all kind of maintain the same shape from this point on.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And speaking of which,
there we go.
Yep. The Imperial 1 class Star Destroyer, made by the same company. Yep. So this is the classic war machine of the Galactic Empire. Even just one strikes terror into the citizens of various planets.
Right.
So, and as we can see in this cross section, in addition to all the guts that comprises of it, you know, we can also see, you know, its war capabilities, and we can also see that it is capable of capturing smaller ships, such as the Tantive 4.
And let's remember, it was, you know, a command ship, Vader's command ship, the Devastator, before the Executor. But it does has its susceptibilities. Anybody that has played any Star Wars video game, whether going back to the original X-Wing and TIE Fighter, Rebel Assault, Squadrons, Battlefront, how you take out a Star Destroyer? Take out the 2 shield generators and fire at the engines.
Yep.
It's not very well armored at the back.
Yep, absolutely. And obviously, if we get you know, further ships down the line, we'll see even more weaknesses and more corners cut.
But let us remember that. Let's go back to, you know, the politics of the Republic or the Empire at the time. We all know that Thrawn and Tarkin were going back and forth with the Emperor. Are you going to fund the Death Star? Or are you going to fund a larger fleet of Star Destroyers? One strikes fear, but it's one target to take out. Thrawn, being the master statistician that he is, I'll say is because he's probably still alive. I'm not going to say he's dead. He said we need to build a bigger, stronger fleet with more Star Destroyers because you have a greater realm of coverage versus a single target. And this is what his plan was to build, was a bigger fleet. Because remember, he was the Grand Admiral of the 7th Fleet.
Yep, absolutely.
bigger fleet, better fighters, what Thrawn was wanting to do. Another big thing, though, about the Star Destroyer itself, though, is it also incorporated a lot of what Tarkin wanted in the Tarkin doctrine of wanting to build something to strike fear into the people, which is definitely where the shape of this takes place, and all of its firepower and everything is facing towards the front because it's always head on to what it's attacking.
Right. And
Always
anybody
going
that's ever
toward that.
played any of the games, whether you're playing the miniatures Armada or you're playing Squadrons, any of the games, you do not want to get in the front arc of a Star Destroyer.
Nope,
You do not.
absolutely.
You approach from the sides. Here we go.
Yep.
There we go. The Executor Star Destroyer. This is, of course, Vader's own flagship. But like we were talking about, in terms of like its weaknesses, like, yeah, it looks big and scary, but turns out all you need is one spinning A-wing to take it down.
Yep.
Well,
let's go into the same design. What was exploding over there? That's the shield generator. Anybody's ever played the games, you take out the shield generators. The bridge at that point is susceptible.
Yep.
That is.
Yep.
And let's remember the Venator class. How many bridges did it have?
2.
That
Yep. Whereas here you just have the one bridge.
One bridge.
Yep. And as we saw in episode 6, as soon as that shield generator was taken out, all you can do is, intensify forward firepower, but then all of a sudden it's too late.
Right. Which makes you think, why didn't they have an alternate bridge somewhere else where you could have lost the main bridge? I mean, all Federation ships in Star Trek have a battle bridge. So it's like, why didn't you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, who knows? But yes, this is indeed what consists of the Executor Star Destroyer.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to the Rebel side and take a look at what they have. We're going to start with the Tantive 4. Now, some people might be saying, well, isn't that ship a bit small to be a capital ship?
Nope. Let's call it by its technical name. This is a Cr90 Corvette.
Yeah.
Cr90A to be exact, based upon that antenna on the top.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a battle cruiser. It is a executive transport, essentially. It's a pleasure cruiser. But it was adopted, first seen in Rebels with Phoenix Squadron.
Yep. And well, didn't we see it earlier in episode 3, I thought?
We did see it in episode 3. Yeah. We did see it land. It was Bail Organa's, personal ship.
Yes.
They flew Yoda back to Coruscant when he was called back to the Senate.
Yep. And we saw it landing at the medical facility where Luke and Leia were born.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if you thought that the Republic Star Destroyers had longevity, this is a ship that's still been in service all the way up to Battle of Exegol. Like that is a ship that is still got the horsepower, still got the firepower where needed. If anybody that's ever played the game, if you ever played Star Wars Armada, they're fast, they're nimble, they have relatively decent firepower, but they're called the blockade runner for a reason, because they're fast and small.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just relating it. My bad.
No,
good to go. Okay. So, and relating it to other games, Empire at War does a really good description and use of this ship as a picket ship, basically picking off fighters and whatnot, keeping off of your capital ship, because they would maneuver out of fire of more powerful ships, and also have the cannons that are able to track and combat the TIE fighters. And
let's ask, James, did you put the Imperial equivalent in the slide deck of this ship?
I'm not sure if I did.
So the Imperial equivalent of this, as first seen in Battlefront, is the Imperial Raider class. So the Corvus is an Imperial. It is the direct Imperial equivalent to this. Small, fast, maneuverable. So if you played Battlefront and you there with the Corvus and Iden, that's the ship. That's the equivalent of the Corvette. And in all the games, they are the equivalent to each other. Even at the same point values, if you're putting them on the match playing the game, they're roughly the same point values.
Yep.
That's weird. I thought the equivalent was the Lancer class Corvette.
Lancer's bigger.
Is it bigger? Okay.
All right. But moving on towards more ships of the Rebel Alliance, we've got the EF-76 Nebulon B frigate. This one is the Redemption. Now you might notice like it's made by Quat Drive Yards, and you're thinking, wait a minute, I thought that don't they make ships for the Galactic Empire? Well, yes, but we have to remember the Rebel Alliance, a lot of their ships had to be taken from Imperial assets. So this used to be a Galactic Empire ship, but was since captured by the Rebel Alliance and refitted for their purposes.
Yeah, the Nebulon B is a freighter. It is a large freighter. And there's actually images in the expanded universe of all these cargo pods all strapped all around it. That little skinny tube down the middle, put your cargo crates all over it.
Yeah.
Yep, indeed. And the frigate that we see in the movies, its primary purpose is for medical use. So any injured soldiers, injured pilots, injured Jedi, like this gentleman here, they would be brought here for medical services.
Yeah, they're always happy to give a hand.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Yes. All right. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah,
This is actually probably my favorite ship in the entire franchise.
Home one, the MC-80A. This is.
Now, go ahead, James.
No, I was about to say no. You're right. This is indeed this is a great ship. It can hold itself together in a fight. Great ship, great small ship transport, troop transport, whatever you need it to be.
Let's go back into the lineage of this ship and let's look at the broader Star Wars story about this ship. The MC-80 Home One is a one-off ship. There is also the MC-80 Liberty class, which you see the Liberty take it by the first blast of the Death Star at the Battle of Endor. How you tell the difference, Home One doesn't have the wings on it. Liberty has the wings. That's how you can tell the difference in them. This ship was built as a Mon Calamari cruise ship. This was a cruise ship for pleasure, for transport. Anybody going down to Starship with the Halcyon? This was the equivalent of it. It was built as a cruise ship. It was converted to be a battle cruiser. So in the whole hierarchy of the Empire, where the Empire thought aliens were a subspecies, lesser species, and kind of irony is that one of the ships or the class of ships that ended up taking down the Empire was built by a species that they enslaved. That was the Mon Cal on there. So if you ever read any of the books, Superhuman on board, because it was built for Mon Calamari, and they wanted it to maintain a humidity just back on the planet. But it was built as a broadsider. So
Yep.
if you ever played the games, while the Star Destroyer was a bow, everything was pointed on that front point. The MC-80s were broadsiders. You did not want to get on the side of one because you had every gun bearing on you at that moment.
Yep.
Particularly the Home One, as we all know from the movies, this was the flagship of Akbar. This was the flagship of the Rebellion. And I love this ship. It's my favorite ship in the entire story.
I like when if you look in the middle, you can see it looks like an artificial beach.
Which we've all been on cruise ships. Every cruise ship has a giant atrium that's like all the way up. You look up and there's a big chandelier hanging up there. It's exactly the same thing.
Yep, exactly.
Another fun thing about a lot of these ships is one of the big things that they've tried to bring in nowadays is that all MC-80 ships are actually different, because they originally started off as actually like the big cities that they had underneath of the planet. And when Darth Vader and all of them and all the Purge troopers and whatnot went to go raid Mon Calamari and whatnot, all of their ships launched from the deep dark space of the ocean into the atmosphere, and they were all eventually converted.
Which is why the Home One, Liberty, and Independence were completely different ships when you look at them.
Yep, indeed.
Now, if you remember Independence, that's from the original 90s X-Wing game. So I'm really going old school on you.
Yep, the flagship Independence.
The flagship Independence.
You must register.
You must register. You must register.
All right. So I know we're a little bit strapped on time, but let's see how many of these ships we can get through. So 30 years on, we're still seeing Star Destroyers. obviously, these are being used by the Empire Pretenders, or the successors, as they like to think themselves. So this is the Finalizer class Star Destroyer. It's and we were first introduced to these in Force Awakens, and we've seen the sort of firepower and what it's capable of, and we've seen the inside of what it is. So function. When you get down to it, it's not really all that different, from the Empire Star Destroyers. I think really the main difference is just the aesthetics.
Yeah.
So
you got 30 years in advance in technology.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. But it's also one of those things like, the First Order isn't built, like the Empire. Like the First Order, was kind of like had to hide in the shadows, had to scrounge up, whatever they could. So there's, even though they're smaller, obviously they're still a big enough threat.
Oh, they didn't have the First Order did not have the quantities of Finalizer class that they had of Imperial class Star Destroyers. They weren't funded like the Empire was.
No.
But they were definitely trying to imitate the Empire with their ship design, their soldiers, and everything like that.
Exactly, because they see themselves as the successors.
Yep.
All right. But obviously, they had a lot of big ships of their own. So we have here the Supremacy Mega Class Star Destroyer. So we first saw this in The Last Jedi. So this was Snoke's capital ship.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those. I think it may have been too big. It's just it's almost like it makes itself into be a target like the Death Star. Probably costs more than it built to build the Death Star. It was just so freaking big, but it was maneuverable. The Death Star could move. This could actually move, but
right. I mean, I think it all depends on the angle where you're attacking it. Like, you attack it from above or below, you got a wide target.
Right.
If you're trying to hit it from anywhere else, obviously you don't have that big of a target. And as we've seen in The Last Jedi, when that ship was destroyed, that was considered, 1 in a million shot.
Yeah, and I don't think the expanded universe has really, or the games have gone into, how to fight against the Supremacy class.
Not really, no.
Yeah. I mean, all the games and everything, we know how to go with a Venator. We know how to go with an Imperial class Star Destroyer. The only way we know how to defend against them is to, suicide kamikaze run a capital ship into it at light speed. That's the only way we've known of from canon on how to destroy one. So maybe we'll have a video game, Squadrons 2 will come out and we have to go fight a Supremacy class Star Destroyer.
It's definitely a very weird and different ship. I don't think there's a whole lot of information out there fully on everything about it either, which is unfortunate because it has a really cool design and the ability to be really cool, but we never really got to see it that much.
So quoting Han Solo, okay, so it's big.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But as we can see, it didn't travel alone. It had its own escort of Star Destroyers coming in, which in hindsight, probably not the best idea, especially if you got, a kamikaze ship going at light speed and just ripping through the entire fleet.
But then again, the Executor class was always flying with Imperial class Star Destroyers as escort.
Yep. But let's take a look at one more ship before we sign off. The Sith Star Destroyer, or as I like to call them, the giant drones, because these ships were designed to have much smaller crews. They were designed to be controlled from one station. So in a way, they kind of operated similar to the Trade Federation ships. And and going back to our conversation, this seems to be like, an expansion, kind of a vision of what Thrawn had in mind in building this giant fleet.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, with this giant fleet, if you look below, you could see the giant cannons. Those cannons have the power to destroy an entire planet.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But of course, as we saw, these things are not foolproof. If you take down the main communications tower, they're pretty much stuck in the water. So
but the advantage of that is that the Sith Empire or Palpatine did learn that control ship, whoever's the control ship, can move. So remember, they moved whoever the control tower was. They moved where the control was. So they essentially made it a mesh network at that point.
Yeah.
So the secret was, if you're trying to destroy a fleet of these, which one's the control ship?
That's true. And had they been successful, these ships would have indeed been a huge threat. Because again, like you said, the control tower is able to move from ship to ship. You have a whole bunch of these, as we saw on Exegol. So if they're off planet and able to explore, it is you're in for a bad time.
Right. And that was Palpatine's final solution.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And as we can see here, we can see an extent to the amount of ships that they had. And then obviously, the Resistance fleet wasn't enough, but then you have the Citizens fleet coming in to pick up the slack, and they were able to take down a whole bunch of these, shooting at the underbellies.
And that was it was hinted at quite a bit in episode 9, building up to the battle. So they had to destroy this fleet before it took off. Because once it had taken off, that was it.
Yeah.
Very dangerous ships.
Yep, indeed. Yeah, but it is interesting. Who knew the Emperor had nostalgia?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh,
there's the cutaway of the.
Yeah, this is the cutaway of Snoke's ship. So we're able to see a clearer view of what goes inside. We're able to see the ships, side by side and whatnot.
Yep. Again, maybe we could dive into that in some expanded universe. Yes, the MC-85.
The MC-85. This is the Resistance's class warship. So this is very similar to Home 1 in terms of design, and named after the commander of the Battle of Scarif operation, if you recall.
Yep.
Look at that. It's a beautiful ship, and it has it's great firepower, good speed. It's able to keep its distance away from the Supremacy.
Yeah, and amazing fuel economy.
Yep, absolutely. All right, and then these other ships that I have, these are the other capital ships that the Resistance had. So these were the other ships that traveled with the Raddus. Of course, the sad thing about these is that these ships did not make it, unfortunately. So once they were in the line of sight of the Supremacy, they were destroyed. The crew had to evacuate and whatnot. But we can see here, this is pretty much the Resistance version, of the Rebel Alliance's medical frigate.
Yep.
And
advancing designs.
Yep. And then finally, we have the Ninka Bunker Buster. This is the other Resistance capital ship that they had.
Yep. Again, just more modern versions of the other ships from the original trilogy.
Yep, exactly. And then here we're able to take a quick inside look as to what goes on in that ship.
Yep.
All right. And with that is all that we have regarding the slides. And by looking at the time, I think we ended at a pretty good moment.
We did. Yeah, that's it. There's other ships in there that we didn't really hit on. The Interdictor class, very specialized ships.
Yeah.
I always refer to the Interdictor class. It has capability of controlling, pulling things out of warp drive. Out of light speed. Wrong franchise. Sorry. The Quasar Fire class. Not really a battleship, but boy, could carry a lot of fighters.
Absolutely.
A very good carrier. In the Arquintans as well. Yeah.
And then we mentioned it as we were building up. Let's not forget the Arquitans class light cruiser. Yep. That was very prevalent in many games, very prevalent in Rebels. That ship was there. And let's not forget that everybody's like, oh, sorry, Din Djarin, he lost the Razor Crest. Dude, he just got his own Imperial Architects class light cruiser.
Another fun thing is the Arquentin is actually a holdover from the Clone Wars as well. It's managed to stay in service a lot longer than the Venator did.
It has.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but I appreciate you guys for sharing your knowledge and insight into these great ships that we were able to show. I hope all the viewers at home learned a little something about their favorite ships that they've seen in the movies and shows or games. But yeah, was there any final words that you guys wanted to say before we move on to the next panel?
No.
All right.
Thanks for giving us a few minutes to talk. We'll do this again next year.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to it. Well, all right, folks. Thanks again for joining us for this great panel on capital ships. We've got another great panel coming up, and just like before, we are still raising money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So if you're able to, look at that QR code, go to the website, and do what you can to help get those numbers up. All right. But with that out of the way, thank you again, guys, and we shall see you next time.
Thank you.